Yo, Goldwings42 here, and I'm back! Sorry for the unexpected disappearance from, YouTube and such. I've been working on like 7 different projects, and I graduated high school. Insane, right? Like, last time you heard from me, I was still in school. I am no longer in school. The job search has been, funky. Is that... Nope, that's just a motorcycle, not a jet engine. Wonderful. Alright. We are recording Learning How to Live Again, Am I Truly Worth It? By Nstlgia on AO3, Chapter 3 today, because, when I went to record Chapter 3 last time, I was sick. I listened back at the recording. It sounded like shit. So, I'm re-recording it. So, yeah. Alright. I'm just gonna get right into it with, Nstlgia's notes. This chapter is shorter than I'd like it to be. Writer's block slapped me in the face with this one, lol. It feels a little all over the place. Oh well. Sorry about the long wait. Hey, they had a longer wait with me, so, Alright. On with the fic. A loud banging on the door caused Izuku to wake up in a panic and consequently tumble off the couch, hitting the floor with a thud. Who could possibly be at the door right now? When he tried to get up, he hit his head against the coffee table and he lay back down on the ground with a groan. Maybe if he stayed down here, the person would go away. To his dismay, the knocking was back, but even louder if that was possible. Izuku sighed and got up carefully to avoid the table. He quickly checked the time, noting that it was Saturday morning. Izuku cautiously walked up to the door, looking at the people. It was Mizuki, Bakugou's mother. He reeled back, eyes wide in shock. Why would she be here? Inko, I know you're in there! Open up! The woman shouted, her voice ringing through the empty apartment. Izuku knew she wouldn't give up. She was just about as stubborn as her kid, if not more. Bracing himself for the conversation, Izuku unlocked the door and opened it. Mitsuki's hard expression immediately softened when she saw him. Oh, Izuku! I'm so glad you're alright, she exclaimed, stepping forward with her arms out, probably to hug him. Izuku flinched backwards and took a step away from her. Mitsuki faltered, but she didn't force him into a hug, thankfully. What do you mean? Izuku asked her, confused. Katsuki told me he hadn't seen you in school all week. Are you sick? Izuku frowned. Why did Bakugou care about his whereabouts? He thought his childhood friend would be ecstatic about him not showing up for school. No, not sick. Actually, I moved to online school to help Mom out. Might as well keep the lie consistent. Mitsuki frowned. Speaking of your mother, is she here? Izuku shook his head. She got called out to work today. She narrowed her eyes, suspiciously. But Izuku had practice with Eraserhead's glare enough to keep a good poker face. When is she back then? I'm not sure. Her schedule is quite unpredictable, Izuku responded. Mitsuki was getting frustrated. Her eyes darted behind Izuku into the apartment, but he was covering a good part of the entryway. Her focus shifted back to him, and with a sigh, she said, Okay, can you tell her to call me? Then, when she gets the chance, I haven't spoken to her in a while. Is she doing alright? Izuku's tense shoulders relaxed, glad her questioning was over. She's fine, just overworked, Mitsuki nodded. It seemed to accept that answer. Well, come over as soon to have dinner or something. We miss you, kid, she said with a smile, showing her teeth. Izuku forced a smile and agreed, though that was the last thing he wanted to do. He didn't want to interact with Bakugou more than necessary, and there was no way he could get his mom to go with him. When she left, Izuku slumped against the closed door, relieved. That could have gone a lot worse. He was just glad that Mitsuki didn't drag Bakugou along with her. Once Mitsuki realized Inko wasn't going to call her anytime soon, he could only hope that she dropped it. But that was wishful thinking. Mitsuki didn't give up. Not wanting to deal with that right now, Izuku went back to the couch to curl up under his blanket. Even though he had requested a shift pretty much every day, Kayama limited him to weekdays, so if he really came down to it, he could get a weekend job. Izuku sighed as he sat in boredom. Before, he would go to the cafe on weekends, but he didn't have anything to actually do. Plus, if Shinsou was working, he didn't want to face that awkward interaction. He decided to actually draft and send the email to Aldera. Since he had been telling others about it, he should probably actually bring it to fruition. Izuku pulled up the email app on his phone, but stopped. He didn't know his mom's email or password. No problem, he could just create a new one. He was sure Aldera would not look into it too much. Midoriya1@gmail.com wasn't taken. Wonderful. Typing formally was hard, but he persevered. He just had to hope Aldera wouldn't actually call his mom to confirm or something. Once that was done, his mind started racing again. Maybe he could go to the library and check out some books. He was sure he could find his old library card from when he was younger. Even though he was out of school, he didn't want to stop learning, per se. Now he could read about what he wanted at his own pace. At the moment, though, he really didn't want to do anything. With his mom around, even though she didn't care for him, she was at least there. Now there was no one to hold him accountable to perform for. He didn't know if that was better or worse. Izuku stayed on the couch, staring at the ceiling for who knows how long. When he checked the time, he could see that it was already almost midnight. The idea of patrolling usually got him motivated enough to get up, but today was just not his day. He almost rolled over to sleep, but remembered that Eraserhead would probably have a fit if he didn't inform him that he was staying home today. Izuku groaned and picked up the burner from the table and sent a quick text. Not going out tonight. Without looking for a response, he closed the phone and drifted off to a dreamless sleep. The next day went about the same. He only got up to use the bathroom. Not even his stomach pains could move him into the kitchen. This was a bad episode, he could recognize in retrospect, probably one of the worst he's had. Not having to do anything made it easier to convince himself that lying there was fine. It didn't help that the couch was extremely comfortable, which was surprising considering how old and beat up it was. Convinced he could rot on the couch for another day, he texted Eraserhead the same thing as the night before. There was no response from him the first time, but only a couple seconds after he sent the text this time, Eraserhead responded. This is the second time this week you haven't been out 2 nights in a row. Everything alright? No, I'm thinking of killing myself, he typed, then deleted. He was the only one to find that funny. All good, no need to worry. I'm very worried about your grammar. Izuku snorted. I ain't writing an essay here, old man. No response, which Izuku expected. He set the phone back down and melted into the cushions and wasted his time thinking of what could have happened if he reached out for help instead. The next morning, Izuku set an alarm to get up for his first official shift at the cafe. He knew if he didn't, he would most likely oversleep and show up late. Izuku forced himself up and had to stay still for a couple of minutes to let the dotted vision, dizziness, and shaky limbs pass. He took a few deep breaths, then went to get ready. He showered, brushed his teeth, and had enough energy to make himself instant ramen. It would at least keep him full for the day. Once that was done, he changed into appropriate clothes. He forgot to get his name tag during training, so he would have to do that today. Grabbing his essentials, he left the apartment. He arrived a few minutes early. Izuku looked for an empty name tag at the back and fastened it to his shirt once he had written his name on it. The apron was tied around his waist, and he started his shift. It was weird. He felt like he was out of his body, watching himself work from above. Even the most ordinary customers barely fazed him. He spilled hot coffee on his sleeve, and that didn't muster a flinch. He felt hollow. Izuku was finally brought out of his zombie-like state when a familiar voice filtered through his brain. Midoriya? Izuku blinked, his vision clearing, and he stared at Shinsou, who stood just ahead of him. Disoriented, he said intelligently, "What?" Shinsou looked awkward, which was normal, but this was more than usual. He also seemed slightly guilty. Izuku frowned and was about to ask him what was wrong when the purple-haired boy beat him to it. "I'm sorry for what I said." After a pause, he elaborated, "About the quirk stuff. It was presumptuous of me, and a bad habit. You don't have to tell me about it, and thank you for what you said. No one has ever really said that to me before." Izuku genuinely had to think hard about his past words. He forgot about the interaction entirely over the weekend. "Oh, you don't have to apologize. It's alright. And, well, no problem? I personally think it should be common sense, but yeah." Shinsou sighed. "Yeah, I wish." Another slightly awkward silence between them. "Want a coffee?" Izuku nodded, relieved. "Yes, please." His co-worker chuckled before going to the coffee machine. He really made it the best. They chatted amicably in between customers. It was nice. It distracted Izuku enough from his destructive thoughts, along with the feeling of emptiness from hours ago. "So, you were already working couples hour before I came in. Do you go to school?" Online school. I'm pretty up to date on everything, so I can manage working during the day." Shinsou raised a brow. "Oh, that must be nice, huh?" Izuku shrugged. "It has its perks. I think I would rather do that than spend another day at my school." His shift went on, made a little better by Shinsou's presence. Who would have known that having something in common, trauma, would make great conversation? Before he knew it, his shift was over, and it was time to go back to the apartment. Neither of them was closing, so they left at the same time. It seemed that they were going in the opposite directions, so Izuku bid him goodbye. Izuku could feel the exhaustion settling into his bones by the time he got back to the apartment. He'd already taken too much time off from patrolling, so he would have to push through. Maybe he should invest in some energy drinks. Having nothing else to do, he cleaned up a bit, and he finally organized his groceries. He thought more about the capture weapon idea, so he spent some time jotting down ideas. Izuku thought Dagobah Beach might have some parts of interest. He also wrote down some things that he could improve on himself during his vigilante excursions. Better gear, maybe a knife to defend himself from stronger opponents, a utility belt to hold said knife, and other things, and more stuff like that. Before he knew it, it was nearing midnight. Izuku sighed, set his notebook down, and got up to stretch and change. Once everything was on, he left. Izuku encountered a couple of violent people before getting to his usual rooftop. Tonight would be one of those. Unfortunately, one of the guys had a knife. Even more proof that he should carry his own, and it was good at wielding it. He got a swipe on Izuku's abdomen, and it was bleeding pretty steadily. But from first glance, the wound wasn't deep. Because of this, he had a harder and slower time getting up to the top of the building. He was panting by the time he climbed to the top, taking the liberty to lie sprawled out on the roof. Eraserhead met him like this. The hero just stared, already questioning his life choices leading up to this moment. Izuku grinned. "Hey, Razor, long time no see. Did you happen to have any bandages lying around?" "That hero costume? For no reason, really." Eraserhead just sighed and threw a bundle at him without saying anything else. "Thanks," Izuku chirped. And he sat up. He pulled up his sweatshirt, careful not to reveal too much. Izuku wrapped up his wound and gave the leftover bandages to Eraser. Is it too optimistic for me to believe this will be your worst injury tonight?" the hero asked, in a comically desperate tone. Probably." Despite his usual carefree demeanor around Eraserhead, he was exhausted and hungry. Saving people was pushing him through it. However, Eraserhead was observant as ever, and smart. He knew outright suggesting a break would put Izuku off, so he tried another tactic. "Follow me," was all the hero said before he walked off determinedly in another direction, with all the confidence of assuming Izuku would follow him. No questions asked. Unfortunately, but fortunately for Eraserhead, Izuku was too curious not to follow. He just hoped whatever this wouldn't take too long, since all he wanted to do right now was collapse in his bed. Eraserhead led him to a small ramen shop that looked to be open 24/7. Izuku frowned and stood outside while Eraserhead opened the door. So, did you just want to show me your favorite ramen place, or... He gave him a deadpan look. Izuku smiled sheepishly. Look, this is great and all, Razor, but I don't have any money on me. Don't be stupid. Let's go. Without further argument, Eraserhead entered the shop, and he followed closely behind. Above all else, Izuku could never say no to free food. They were waited on pretty much right away, most likely due to the late hour. Eraserhead ordered his food, and so did Izuku. He chose the cheapest option, which would still give him more than was needed. Thankfully, Eraser didn't comment on his choice. Now they sat in awkward silence. Well, awkward on his part. He was sure the hero did not care whatsoever for the tension. He sat completely quiet, while Izuku fidgeted uncomfortably. Running around the city with the hero was one thing. Sitting down with him in an enclosed space was another. The ramen was served, and Izuku was glad for something to do, even if eating while trying to keep his mask over his face was awkward. However, it was definitely a good meal, better than the store-bought one he acquired. Suddenly, the air shifted, and Eraserhead leaned forward with his elbows on the table. When Izuku was thinking about other things, the hero had already finished his late-night dinner. He tensed, knowing the upcoming conversation would not be his favorite. Shadow. Izuku immediately interrupted him, his nerves sky-high. Shadow is such a bland name. I've been thinking about changing it, and something actually cool, you know? Something that would actually leave an impression on people. He rambled for a while until Eraserhead cleared his throat, a sound that should really not be as intimidating as it was. He shut his mouth, waiting for whatever he wanted to say. I'm just going to be blunt with you, Eraserhead started. And really, when was he not? I understand that you have your own motivations to do this, but even seasoned heroes can't just use brute force their way through control. Especially for someone your age, you need to seriously be eating and sleeping properly. Izuku inwardly groaned. Was he seriously getting a lecture right now? Sleep? When's the last time you had a full night's sleep? 2004? Rusam gave him a blank stare. I can regulate myself. You aren't. You made a lot of mistakes tonight, and honestly, for the past few nights. That will get you killed, and I can't always be around to save you. Izuku wanted to reject that, but deep down, he was right. Ever since his mother left, he'd been running on autopilot while forgetting basic human needs. But he hated that he was having this conversation with Eraserhead, of all people. Acting a bit petulant, Izuku crossed his arms across his chest. You don't need to save me all the time. I can handle it. A lie. But he couldn't admit the truth. Eraserhead hissed. No, you can't. I've held back my own curiosity to respect your wishes, but if I have to get a hold of Tsukauchi to look into you and your home life, I will. The words had a physical impact on Izuku. He leaned back in his chair and stopped himself from rubbing his chest from a sudden pain he felt there. He was angry, but also scared. Who did he think he was? You wouldn't. I would. I will not be witness to your death, Shadow. You don't understand the restraint I have from using my capture weapon to contain you all night. Something has to change. Do you have a safe space to go when this is all over? What a load of bullshit. Izuku abruptly stood from his seat, almost knocking the chair over in his haste. As if you care! You're not my dad, Eraserhead. Do you really think I need you around all the time? I could easily go somewhere else, away from you. You think finding out who I am is going to make a difference? Fine, but I'm not going to stay around and let you treat me like some project to make yourself feel better. His chest was heaving, and he could tell his response bothered Eraserhead. Good. Izuku was bluffing the whole way through. If Eraserhead really did find out who he was fucked. He could technically find another area to hang out in, but he didn't want to do that. Truly, his hands were shaking so hard he had to clench them into fists. Eraserhead finally spoke. You're right, I'm not your dad, but I am a hero. Whether you like it or not, I can't let you burn yourself out into nothing. Hate me if you want, I'd rather you do that than be dead. Izuku didn't like where this conversation ended up. He felt like the walls were closing in on him, and he needed to get out. Without responding, he fled the restaurant, ignoring the hero yelling his name. He needed to leave. He ran for what felt like forever. Eventually, he was too exhausted to continue. Once he checked his surroundings to make sure he wasn't being followed, he quickly entered the apartment and slammed the door behind him, mentally apologizing to the neighbors. Izuku's breaths were coming out fast, and he couldn't control them. He ripped the mask off and pushed the hood of his sweatshirt off his head, hyperventilating. After he got his shoes off next, he collapsed into a heap in front of the couch. He pulled his knees to his chest and curled into a ball, tears stinging his eyes. Izuku stayed like that until he passed out. Fortunately, and unfortunately for him, past Izuku had the insight to set an alarm for the next morning for his shift. It was an early shift, so he couldn't just wait. Izuku groaned when he woke up and immediately shut off the alarm, his joints aching from a sleep position on the floor, and he knew, without checking the mirror, that his eyes were still puffy and red. He sighed and stretched, getting up quickly and getting ready. Izuku left his hair wet after his shower, only rubbing the towel over it quickly so he had time to walk to the cafe. The walk was fine. The morning rush made him nervous, though. Luckily, Kayama was there to help. It was just the two of them for the first part of the morning, and customers were generally patient and understanding, but there was also those who made him question his life choices. During his shift, a blonde man with a perpetually cheerful disposition came up to the register. Izuku wanted to shade his eyes from the sheer glow of his smile. How is he so energetic this morning? Good morning. I'll take 1 black coffee with an iced vanilla latte to go, the man said. Izuku entered the order into the register and made a small noise from his throat. Good choice on the latte, he said conversationally. Thank you, listener. The response made him freeze. Already, Izuku thought his appearance and voice was familiar, but this pretty much solidified his assumption. Without thinking, Izuku blurted, Present Mike? Both their eyes widened. Izuku immediately apologized. Sorry, I shouldn't have. No, it's alright. I'm surprised but delighted you recognize me. A radio show enjoyer? Izuku bit his bottom lip and nodded. Ever since he was young, he tuned in on President Mike's radio show. He hadn't recently, but he would never not recognize the voice of the endearing nickname the hero gave his fans. President Mike snapped his finger guns at him and winked. Great taste. Here. The man gave him cash, and Izuku realized he hadn't even given him a total. Keep the change. It was a lot more than necessary, but before Izuku could give it back, President Mike was already at the pickup counter. Izuku put the money needed in the register and pocketed the rest. Kayama did tell him employees could keep any tips they were given. Once he was shook out of his stupor, Izuku started making the drinks. He wondered who the second was for. Here you go, Izuku said, and placed the coffees on the counter for him. You rock, thanks. President Mike replied as he grabbed each cup. Izuku waved, watching as they left the cafe. How wild. After that, the rest of his shift went by pretty boringly. Since he had the morning shift, it ended before he could work with Shinsou. Honestly, he was fine with that, because he swore that boy could read through his bullshit easily. He said goodbye to Kayama and walked home without trouble. When he got home, though, he collapsed back into the couch. He hadn't really had time to process what happened the night before. Yes, what his Eraserhead said was true, on some level at least. He was falling apart. However, that was not Izuku's concern. If it killed him, good. What really bothered him was what Eraserhead said afterwards. After the rocky beginning, when Eraserhead tried to arrest him the first few times, he had never threatened him like that. And the worst part was, Izuku didn't think he was lying. He would do that if he thought he was protecting Izuku. It was just not the kind of protection he wanted. This sucked, because what was he supposed to do? He didn't want to run into Eraserhead or risk that coming true, but he also wanted to go out. This really sucked. For now, Izuku wanted to catch up on his sleep. Over the next few nights, Izuku stayed home, much to his dislike. Eraser texted him a few times, but he never checked the messages. Screw him. And screw Tsukauchi too. Well, maybe that was uncalled for, because he doesn't actually know if Tsukauchi would follow along with what Eraserhead in his plan. Oh, what was he kidding? Tsukauchi and Eraserhead worked together and probably had some history that made them relatively close. Why would he show loyalty towards a troublesome kid? He was way in over his head here. Maybe he should move on to somewhere else, or maybe he should speed up his plan, whatever was most convenient. It had been days of still staying in the night at night and ignoring Eraserhead's text. One afternoon, he was on his way out for his job to the cafe when he opened the door to a shocked Tsukauchi and a couple officers behind him. Izuku froze, all kinds of scenarios running through his mind. Eraser didn't lie and told Tsukauchi to find me. He found me out there, didn't buy his bullshit suit, and sent an officer to arrest him for truancy. His classmates framed him for the quirkless kid for a crime he didn't commit, etc., etc. Midoriya Izuku? Tsukauchi started, his voice bringing it back to the present. He hid his shaking hands in the pockets of his pants. He nodded. The detective put on a smile that was probably supposed to be reassuring, but it made dread manifest more sharply instead. Sorry about this. You look to be heading somewhere, so we'll be quick. An individual made a concerning call to our station that you weren't in a, quote, safe and loving environment. Is your mother home? Izuku was starting to get sick and tired of this question. No, sir. She's at work. He had to be careful here, especially knowing Tsukauchi's quirk. He knew that to be true, at least. Tsukauchi nodded. Is she normally gone around this time? Yes. Alright, could you please give us some way to contact her? Tsukauchi asked. Izuku frowned, becoming defensive. Why would he need that? The detective paused, probably not expecting to push that. The individual was quite adamant that we investigate this, Midoriya. We will need to speak to your mother for questioning, I afraid. Izuku's heart was beating out of his chest. No one cared enough to make this report like this. Well, that wasn't really true. Mitsuki cared for some reason, in her own way. But this was too much. Thinking it was just easier to comply, he gave the detective his mother's number, wondering if she'd changed it when she moved out. Thank you, Midoriya. Sorry again for the intrusion, Tsukauchi said kindly, and he and his officers left quickly. When they were gone, Izuku heaved an exhausted sigh. This month had been the absolute worst. And that's the chapter. So we got some endnotes here. Then I'm probably going to yap at you for like a couple minutes. Alright, endnotes. Eraser really dropped the ball on this one. Now all the parental figures have met Izuku the person, although Hizashi hasn't met Izuku the vigilante yet. Alright, that was chapter 3. Once again, I am sorry for the wait. I mean, like, yeah, it's been a couple months. I didn't intend for it to go this long. I've kind of just, like, been putting it off. I managed to start a band while I was off YouTube, too, so that's fun. It's going. We have people in the group, so yeah. And as I said before, I've graduated high school. I'm searching for a job. So that's where my life is right now. Yeah, that's it. Go give kudos to Nstlgia over on AO3, sorry, if you enjoyed. And that's it. Comments, likes, and such are always appreciated here on YouTube. Yeah, that's about it. Live your life, don't die, drink water, eat properly, take care of yourself, you know, the things. So, yeah, bye.